When I picked up that phone to ask my son Max about his wedding date, I never imagined the words that were about to shatter my world into 1,000 pieces. My daughter-in-law, Lena, looked me dead in the eye, and with a smile colder than a Chicago winter, she said, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." Special people? Those two words hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken in my 71 years on this earth. Special people. Let me tell you what not special looks like. For 3 whole years, I paid their $500 rent every single month without fail. When they had nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, I bought every stick of furniture in their apartment. When their refrigerator was empty, I filled it. When they needed something, anything, I was the first person they called. But apparently, I wasn't special enough. I stood there in my own living room, holding that phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my only son avoid looking at me while Lena made herself comfortable on the very sofa I had bought for them. That pale pink dress I had kicked out for her wedding was hanging in my closet, tag still on it, along with the matching shoes and the dream of being part of the most important day of my baby boy's life. I had spent $200 on that outfit, honey. $200 I could have used for my own bills, thinking about how beautiful I would look in Max's wedding photos. Photos I would never be in. For weeks, I had been planning everything. I had scraped together $1,000 to give them as a wedding gift. I had called my sister Diana all the way in Chicago to tell her the good news, practically shouting through the phone about how my baby was finally getting married. I had cleaned this house from top to bottom, polishing every corner until it shined, thinking they might want to come celebrate with me after the ceremony. All of that collapsed in 1 second with those four poison-filled words, "Only special people." Max finally looked up at me, and when he spoke, his voice sounded rehearsed, like he had practiced this lie in the mirror. "Mom, it was just intimate, real small, just the two of us and the witnesses." But baby, I knew better. I'm old, but I ain't blind, and I sure ain't stupid. I saw those photos on Facebook. Lord knows I saw them. I saw Lena's parents standing there all proud next to the bride and groom, grinning like they had won the lottery. I saw her brothers and sisters raising champagne glasses, toasting to the happy couple. And that white dress Lena was wearing, the one that looked like it cost more than my monthly pension, I had helped pay for that with the $800 I gave her just last month for what she called personal expenses. I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see, everything they tried to hide from me. 1 week later, exactly 7 days after that humiliation burned itself into my heart, Lena called me. But this time, honey, her voice was completely different. Gone was that confident woman who looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't special. Now she sounded desperate, almost begging. "Renata, the rent is overdue," she said, her voice shaking like a leaf in the wind. "The landlord is threatening to kick us out. He says if we don't pay by Friday, we're done. You forgot to make the transfer." Forgot? Forgot. I sat there in silence, remembering all those times I had rushed to that bank like my life depended on it to make sure they had a roof over their heads. All those times I had canceled my own plans, put off my own needs, eaten nothing but beans and rice for dinner so I could give them money for their wants and desires. All those times I had made myself smaller so they could have more. And now, after they had shut me out of the most important moment of their lives like I meant nothing, they had the nerve to call me, acting like everything was normal? "Lena," I said, and my voice was so calm it surprised even me. "Didn't I tell you? I only help special people." The silence on that phone was so deep, so complete, that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. For the first time in 3 years, it wasn't me trembling. It was her. "Renata, I don't understand," she stammered, and I could hear the panic rising in her throat. "We've always been special to you. You're like a second mother to me." Lies. All lies, wrapped up in that sweet voice she only used when she needed something from me. The same voice she used to ask for money for that wedding dress. The same voice she used to ask for money for their honeymoon, for the rings I helped pay for without even knowing I would never see the ceremony where they were exchanged. The same voice she used to make me feel like I was important to them when all I really was a bank account with feelings. For so many years, baby, I walked on eggshells around my own son, weighing every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping to get just a crumb of real affection back. I tried to be the perfect mother, the understanding mother-in-law, the silent provider who never complained when they treated me like I was invisible in my own family. But that phrase, "only special people," woke something up in me that had been sleeping for too long. I sat down that night and did the math. I needed to see it in black and white, needed to understand exactly how much of a fool I had been. The rent alone for 3 years, that was $18,000. Food and supplies, about $200 a month, another $7,200. Birthday gifts, Christmas presents, anniversary gifts, at least $3,000. Lena's so-called medical emergencies, $800. That car payment they swore they would pay me back for, $2,500. The air conditioner that broke in their apartment, $600. The living room furniture set, $1,200. $33,400. $33,400 of my late husband Robert's hard-earned money, money he left me so I could live my last years in peace and dignity, money I had saved penny by penny through decades of honest work. All of it poured into keeping two grown adults comfortable, two people who couldn't even pretend to respect me enough to invite me to their wedding. On that night, after I hung up on Lena, I sat on my bed and I cried. But honey, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger, of frustration that had been building up for years, of humiliation I had swallowed silently over and over again. I cried for all the times they made me feel like my love was a burden instead of a blessing. I cried for the foolish woman I had been, the woman who had lost herself trying to be everything to people who saw her as nothing more than a bank account. "Mom," Max interrupted, using that condescending voice he had perfected over the years, "we're worried about you. Your behavior has been very strange lately. First, you cut us off financially without any explanation. Then you don't answer our calls. We think you might need professional help." Professional help? Oh, Lord have mercy. Lena came closer and tried to take my hand with that fake tenderness she saved for moments when she needed something. "Renata, honey, we know you're under a lot of stress. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you realize. At your age, episodes of confusion are normal." The word confusion rang in my ears like an alarm bell. Right then, I understood exactly why they had brought this lawyer. This wasn't about helping me. This was about declaring me mentally incompetent so they could take control of my finances. The same woman who had told me I wasn't special enough for her wedding was now treating me like I was some senile old lady. "I am not confused," I said with the firmness that made all three of them go quiet. "I'm clearer than I've been in years, and you all are going to leave my house right now." Mr. Fisher stepped forward with that professional voice lawyers use when they want to sound reasonable. "Mrs. Richter, I understand you're feeling overwhelmed, but your children have a right to intervene if they believe your ability to make financial decisions is impaired. They've documented several concerning behaviors." Concerning behaviors? The laugh that came out of my throat was harsh, almost bitter. Like what? Deciding that my money belongs to me? Deciding I'm not going to finance the lives of two grown adults who treat me like trash? Lena jumped up like I had slapped her. "We never treated you badly. You're part of our family. Everything you have is going to belong to us one day anyway. We're just speeding up the process." There it was, the naked truth stripped of all pretense. Everything I had would belong to them one day anyway. In their minds, I was already dead. They were just collecting their inheritance early. It didn't matter if I had 70 years left or 70 days. To them, I was nothing but an ATM with legs that had suddenly become problematic. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door. "All three of you, out of my house." Max stood up with that angry child face he used to make when he didn't get his way. "Mom, we can't just leave. We have obligations. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off from one day to the next." "I can't." My voice rose for the first time. "Who says I can't? For 3 years, I paid rent that wasn't even in my name. I filled a refrigerator in a house where I wasn't welcomed. I financed a life that clearly had no place for me." Mr. Fisher pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on my table. "Mrs. Richter, we've prepared some documents that could facilitate this transition. A power of attorney that would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances more efficiently. This would just be temporary until you feel better." I picked up that folder and without even opening it, threw it straight into my trash can. The only transition happening here is you three transitioning yourselves right out that front door. Lena started crying, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration, of rage she could barely contain. "You can't do this to us, Renata. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things, we took on financial obligations because we knew we could count on you." Obligations based on my money, not on my well-being, not on my happiness, not on my company, just my money. And now that I've decided my money is better used in my own life, suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs legal guardianship? Max tried to come closer, but I stepped back. This wasn't the little boy who used to run into my arms when he had nightmares. This was a 35-year-old man who saw his own mother as an obstacle between him and a comfortable life financed by someone else. "Mom, we made mistakes. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was nervous. I was under pressure. We can fix this if you'll just be reasonable again." Reasonable? The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Being reasonable means continuing to pay for your life while you treat me like a stranger? It means pretending it doesn't hurt to be excluded from the most important day of my only son's life? Mr. Fisher started packing his papers with the efficiency of someone used to having proposals rejected. "Mrs. Richter, this isn't over. Your family has legal options. If you're truly making irrational decisions due to mental health issues, a judge can determine that you need guardianship." His words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a manipulative family visit. This was a real legal threat. They wanted to declare me incompetent to manage my own affairs. "Mr. Fisher," I said, looking him dead in the eyes, "I suggest you do your homework before you threaten the 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances perfectly for 40 years, who raised her son alone after her husband died, who ran a household and worked honestly until retirement, and who until last week was financially supporting 2 completely capable adults." Lena stopped crying and looked at me with a coldness that finally showed her true face. "This won't stay like this, Renata. We have rights. We have lawyers too." "Perfect," I replied. "Hire all the lawyers you want. With your own money, of course, because mine is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums." The 3 of them headed to the door with the wounded dignity of people who weren't used to being told no. Before he left, Max turned to me one last time. "Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to wind up alone, with nobody to take care of you when you really need it." "Max," I said with deep sadness but also crystal clear clarity, "I'm already alone. The difference is that now it's by my own choice, not because of your neglect." I closed the door behind them and stood in my living room surrounded by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night I couldn't sleep, but not because of sadness or regret. It was adrenaline from taking back control of my own life. I lay awake in bed, planning my next steps like a general preparing for battle. If Max and Lita wanted to fight, I would give them a war. But I would be a war fought with intelligence, not emotion. At 6 o'clock the next morning, I was already dressed and ready. My first stop was the office of Mr. Weber, a lawyer I had met years ago when handling Robert's will. Unlike Mr. Fisher, whom Max and Lena had brought, Mr. Weber had an impeccable reputation and specialized in protecting the rights of elderly people. Mrs. Richter, he told me as I explained the situation, what your children tried to do yesterday is more common than you think. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's a federal crime. The fact that they entered your house without permission and reviewed your private documents also constitutes a violation. His words both calmed and worried me. They calmed me because they confirmed I wasn't crazy, that what happened was truly abusive. They worried me because I realized the situation was more serious than I thought. We need to document everything, Mr. Weber continued. Every transfer, every gift, every time they pressured you for money. We're also going to change your will to protect your assets from future manipulation attempts. We spent 3 hours going through my financial records. Mr. Weber actually whistled when he saw the total sum. Mrs. Richter, with this money, you could have lived comfortably, traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you completely financed the lives of 2 adults who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding. When I left Mr. Weber's office, I had a complete plan. First, I would change all the locks on my house. Second, I would install a security system with cameras to protect myself from future surprise visits. Third, I would open a new bank account at a different bank where they had no contacts. And fourth, I would start living the life I had been putting off for years. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Sumner, had known me for years because I was always in there buying things to fix up Max and Lena's apartment. This time was different. Mrs. Richter, what brings you in today? He asked, with the familiarity of someone who had silently witnessed my wasted generosity. Another emergency with your son? No, Mr. Sumner. This time it's for my own house. I need to change all the locks, and I want the best quality you have. He looked surprised, but asked no questions. While I was choosing the locks, his son Ethan, who installed security systems, came by. It was like Providence itself had arranged it. Ethan, I said, I also need surveillance cameras installed. The complete system. Price is not an issue. While they prepared everything for installation the next day, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Lena, calling from someone else's phone because I had blocked her number after yesterday's confrontation. Renata, it's Lena. Please don't hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults. Talk, I said, my voice flat. Listen, I understand you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I have talked, and we want to make it up to you. How about we have a special dinner to celebrate our marriage with you? We can do it at your house, cook together like we used to. The manipulation in her words was so obvious, I almost laughed out loud. Lena, how much rent do you owe, exactly? The silence on the other end confirmed I had hit the nerve. Well, it's 2 months. $1,000 total. But I'm not just calling about that, Renata. We really miss you in our lives. Do you miss me or do you miss my money? Both, she replied with surprising honesty. Renata, I won't lie. Yes, we need your financial help, but we love you too. You're important to us. If I'm so important, I said, why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I not important enough to get a phone call that doesn't ask for money? When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing? Silence. We both knew the answer. Never. Lena, I'm only going to explain this once. For 3 years, you treated me like an ATM with feelings. You used me. You ignored me. You humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me in the worst way possible. Now that the money's running out, you suddenly discover you love me? Renata, please! I cut her off. There is no please. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough for your wedding. Now I'm making mine. I hung up and turned off the phone completely. I didn't want any more interruptions on my day of liberation. That afternoon, I went to the beauty salon I hadn't visited in over a year. I had always canceled my appointments because Max or Lena needed something urgent, or because the money I set aside for myself became an emergency for them. Mrs. Richter! My favorite stylist, Cynthia, called out. What a surprise! I thought you'd forgotten about us. I didn't forget you, Cynthia. I just forgot that I deserved to be pampered too. I treated myself to the full service. Cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without feeling guilty about it. While Cynthia worked on my hair, she told me about her life, her children, her dreams. It was refreshing to have a conversation that didn't revolve around Max and Lena's needs. You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter. But more than that, you look free. Did something good happen? Yes, Cynthia. I finally learned to say no. When I got home that evening, there was a car in front of my door that I didn't recognize. My heart raced for a moment, thinking Max and Lena might have come back with reinforcements. But as I got closer, I saw an older woman sitting on my porch steps. Mrs. Richter, she asked as I got out of my car. Yes, that's me. Can I help you? I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We've been neighbors for years, but we've never really had a chance to talk. Yesterday, I heard very loud voices coming from your house, and I got worried. Is everything okay? Her sincere concern touched something deep inside me. Here was a stranger showing more interest in my well-being than my own son. Come in, Mrs. Brooks. I'll make you some coffee, and I'll tell you a story you won't believe. While I made coffee, I told her the whole situation. Eleanor listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally. When she finished, her eyes were filled with tears. Mrs. Richter, she said, you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I also thought it was my duty to finance her adult life. I also believed she wouldn't love me if I didn't give her money. What happened? I asked. I cut off the money when I realized she only called when she needed something. At first, it was terrible. She threatened me, emotionally blackmailed me, tried to make me feel guilty. But after 6 months, my daughter called to genuinely apologize. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not money. Her words gave me hope and confirmed I had made the right decision. Do you think Max and Lena will understand one day? Maybe yes, maybe no, she answered honestly. But that's no longer your responsibility, Mrs. Richter. Your responsibility now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about whether Max and Lena had money for rent, for food, for their whims. I went to bed thinking about myself, my plans, my future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Ethan and Mr. Sumner arrived at 8 a.m. to change the locks and install the security system. While they worked, my phone wouldn't stop ringing from unknown numbers. Lena was still trying to reach me from different phones, but I had developed a new skill, completely ignoring calls that didn't suit me. Mrs. Richter, this system will give you complete peace of mind. You can see from your phone who's coming to your house even when you're not here, and if someone tries to break in without permission, it automatically sends an alert to the police. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing a security system to protect myself from my own son, but it didn't hurt as much as it used to. It was simply a practical measure to maintain my newfound peace. When I woke up the next morning, something inside me had shifted. It wasn't just the pain of betrayal anymore. It was something deeper, something colder, something stronger. I got up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same tired eyes looking back at me, same wrinkles that told stories of years spent giving love without getting it back. But there was something new in my reflection that morning, a hardness I didn't recognize, a determination that had been buried under years of just going along to get along. I went to the kitchen and made my coffee, just like I had done every morning for the past 40 years. But this time, I didn't think about calling Max to check in on him. I didn't look at my phone hoping for a message from him apologizing for yesterday's humiliation. For the first time in I don't know how long, I was my own first priority. I sat down at that kitchen table where I had planned so many surprises for them, counted out so many bills for their expenses, and cried so many silent tears when they treated me with nothing but indifference. But today, that table was going to witness something completely different. I pulled out my checkbook, my bank statements, all of it. I needed to see the full picture of my own foolishness laid out in front of me in numbers that don't lie. Monthly rent, $500 times 36 months. That's $18,000 right there. Food and household supplies, roughly $200 a month. Another $7,200. Gifts for birthdays, Christmas, anniversaries, at least $3,000. Medical emergencies for Lena, $800. That car loan they never paid back, $2,500. Fixing their air conditioner, $600. Their living room furniture, $1,200. $33,400. That was the exact price tag on my stupidity. $33,400 taken from what my husband Robert left me, from my pension, from savings I had built up penny by penny over decades of hard, honest work. All that money thrown away, keeping two grown adults comfortable, two people who couldn't even show me basic respect? The phone rang. Max's name lit up the screen. Normally, my heart would have jumped and I would have run to answer it hoping he was calling to apologize, to explain that it was all just some terrible misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. And I just kept drinking my coffee like nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Lena, this time. I let that one ring too. Then a text came through from Max. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. I hadn't done that in months, just walked without some specific errand, without something related to them. It was always the bank to make transfers, the grocery store to buy them something, the pharmacy for Lena's medications. Today, I walked just because I wanted to. I passed by the park where I used to take naps when he was little. I remembered that sweet boy who would hug me tight and tell me I was the best mama in the whole world. When did he become this man who treated me like an ATM with feelings? When did I start believing I had to buy my own son's love? At the bank, where I had made so many automatic transfers, I stopped right in front of the door. Mr. Klein, the branch manager, saw me through the glass and waved. He had known me for years. He had processed every single one of my transfers to Max and Lena, watched my account drained month after month to fill up theirs. I walked straight to his office. Mr. Klein, I said, I need to cancel all the automatic transfers I have set up. He looked surprised. For 3 years, those transfers had been as regular as the sunrise. Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen? His concern was genuine, more genuine than any interest Max had shown in my well-being in months. What happened is I finally opened my eyes. I want to cancel everything. And I also need information about how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else having access to my money. While Mr. Klein processed the cancellations, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Max, Lena, Max again. It was like they had developed some kind of radar that detected when their money source was in danger. I turned the phone off completely. "Mrs. Richter," he said as he handed me the papers, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but in all these years I've watched you be incredibly generous with your family. I just want to make sure you're not being pressured to make these changes." His words touched something deep inside me. This man, who barely knew me beyond bank transactions, showed me more genuine concern for my well-being than my own flesh and blood. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Klein. If anything, I finally stopped pressuring myself. When I left that bank, I felt strangely light, like I had left an enormous weight behind me in that office. For the first time in 3 years, my money was completely mine. I had no financial obligations to people who saw me as a resource instead of as a person. I went home thinking about all the things I hadn't done because I was too busy pleasing Max and Lena. The trips I never took because I was saving money for them. The friends I stopped seeing because I was always available for their so-called emergencies. The hobbies I had given up because every dollar I spent on myself was one less dollar for their needs. When I got home, there were 3 cars parked in front of my door. Max's, Lena's, and one I didn't recognize. Through my windows, I could see movement inside my house, my blood cold. They had keys. I had given them keys because I trusted them, because I thought one day they would take care of me the way I had taken care of them. I took a deep breath. It was time for the first real confrontation of my new life. I opened my front door to a scene I will never forget as long as I live. Max was sitting on my couch with his head in his hands. Lena was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. And some older man I had never seen before was going through papers on my dining room table. My papers, my personal documents, in my house. "What is happening here?" I asked, and my voice came out louder than I expected. All 3 of them turned to look at me like I was the intruder in my own home. Lena spoke first, her voice full of that desperate urgency I had heard on the phone. "Renata, thank God you're here. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher. He's from the law firm we consulted about your situation." "My situation? What situation?" I asked, and somehow my voice stayed calm. "I'm doing just fine." Max finally lifted his head and looked at me with eyes that used to belong to my innocent little boy but now just reflected financial panic. "Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Klein said you blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you would do that." Mr. Fisher, a man in his 50s, wearing a gray suit and a smile that didn't inspire one bit of trust, walked towards me with his hand out. "Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being, and they asked me to assess the situation." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I walked straight to my dining room table and gathered up all my private documents that this stranger had been looking through without my consent. "These are my private documents. You have no right to look at them without my consent."
While they were working, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. Call my sister Diana in Chicago. We had lost touch because every time we talked, I would go on and on about Max and Lena's successes, about how much money I spent on them, about how proud I was to help them. I realize now that our conversations had become nothing but financial reports disguised as family news. "Renata?" Diana answered, surprised. "Sister, how are you? We haven't spoken in months." "I'm good, Diana. Better than good, actually. I'm calling to tell you I've finally come to my senses." I told her the whole story, from the beginning. The secret wedding, the humiliation, the visit with the lawyer, my decision to cut off the funding. Diana listened in silence. When I finished, her response surprised me. "Renata, sister, it was about time. Every time we spoke, it broke my heart to hear you brag about how much money you gave them, as if love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how. What did you want to tell me? That Max never spoke lovingly about you at family gatherings. It was always, my mom helped me with this, or my mom bought me that. But never, I miss my mom, or I love my mom. It was like you were a service provider, not a person. Her words hurt, but it was necessary pain. Like when a doctor cleans an infected wound, it hurts, but it's part of the healing. You know what else I noticed? Diana continued. Lena always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renata is no longer here, we can remodel her house. Or, when we inherit, we'll invest in the business. Like they were waiting for you to die to really start living. This revelation hit me like ice water. They didn't just see me as an ATM, they saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and my money. While I was trying to make them happy, they were planning their future without me. After talking with Diana, I sat in my kitchen processing all this information. Years married to a man who truly loved me. 35 years raising my son alone after Robert's death. And 3 years financing 2 adults who saw me as nothing but an obstacle worth about $33,000. The doorbell rang. On my new cameras, I saw it was Eleanor with a mug in her hands. I opened the door and she handed me freshly brewed coffee. I thought you might need some company after everything you told me yesterday, she said with that genuine smile I had come to appreciate. We sat in my living room and Eleanor told me more details from her own experience. My daughter said the exact same things to me that Lena says to you. You're like a second mom to me. We're special to you. Everything will be ours one day anyway. Those are rehearsed phrases, Mrs. Richter. It's like they all read from the same playbook. Do you think such a playbook actually exists? I asked, half joking. Not officially, but they all seem to follow the same script. Chapter 1, make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2, create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3, when she resists, question her mental health. We laughed, but it was bitter laughter. It was both funny and tragic to recognize such predictable patterns in her own children's behavior. Did you ever feel guilty about cutting off the money? I asked Eleanor. Every single day for the first 3 months, she answered honestly. But then I started seeing results. My daughter had to get a second job. Her husband stopped playing golf every weekend and started looking for extra work. They learned to live within their means. And most importantly, they learned that I was a person, not just a resource. That afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't put off for years. Visit Robert's grave. I always made excuses not to go because Max or Lena needed something urgent, or because the taxi fare was better invested in one of their emergencies. The cemetery was quiet and beautiful. Robert's grave looked neglected because I hadn't been there to clean it in months. I sat on the grass next to his headstone and talked to him like he was still alive. Robert, my love, I think I lost myself for a while. After you left, I put all my energy into Max. I wanted to be the best mother in the world, thinking somehow that would make up for him growing up without a father. But I think in the process, I forgot to be myself. The wind blew gently, and for a moment I felt like he was listening. Our son has become someone I don't recognize. Or maybe he was always like this and I didn't want to see it. His wife? Well, you know how she is. The money you left for me to live peacefully, I spent it all taking care of them. But not anymore, my love. I've learned. I cleaned his grave, replaced the withered flowers with fresh ones, and stayed there another hour just enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't in a hurry to get home to solve some crisis for Max and Lena. When I got home,
There were 3 cars parked in front of my door again. My heart raced, but this time I was prepared. The camera showed me it was Max, Lena, and 2 other people I didn't recognize. They all looked agitated, talking among themselves and pointing at my house. I didn't get out of my car. Instead, I called Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, they're at my house again. This time they've brought more people. What should I do? Don't get out of the car, Mrs. Richter. I'm on my way and I'm calling the police. After our conversation yesterday, I requested a temporary restraining order. They're not allowed to be on your property. Minutes later, Mr. Weber and 2 police patrol cars arrived. I watched the officers talk to Max and Lena. I saw my son gesticulating angrily. I saw Lena crying again, but this time her tears didn't move me one bit. One of the officers approached my car. "Ma'am, you can get out safely. Your visitors are leaving immediately." As I stepped out, Max shouted at me from the street. "Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son." "Max," I replied, with a calm that surprised even me, "family doesn't threaten lawsuits about mental incompetence. Family doesn't break into people's homes without permission. Family doesn't treat their mothers like ATMs." Lena screamed from across the street. "You're gonna pay us everything you owe us. We have bills you co-signed for. You can't just abandon us like this." Mr. Weber stepped forward. "Mrs. Richter, any future communication must go through my office. And I suggest you consult with an attorney before making collection threats, because my client has full documentation of all the voluntary payments she made over 3 years." I watched them drive away in their cars, defeated but not giving up. I knew this wasn't over, but for the first time in this whole situation, I felt confident. I had professional help. I had emotional support from Eleanor. And most importantly, I had mental clarity about what was right and what was wrong. That night, Eleanor invited me to her house for dinner. I met her daughter who was visiting, and I got to see with my own eyes what a healthy family relationship looked like. They spoke respectfully to each other, asked genuine questions about each other's lives, laughed together. The daughter didn't ask for money once the entire evening. "I wanted that with Max too," I confessed to Eleanor after her daughter left. "And maybe you'll have it one day. But first, he has to learn that you're a person who deserves respect, not just a source of income."
The next few days were strangely peaceful. The surveillance cameras showed me that Max and Lena drove past my house several times a day, sometimes slowly, sometimes they parked for a few minutes, but never got out. It was like they were studying my routine, looking for the perfect moment for their next move. Mr. Weber had advised me to document every one of these visits, so I kept a detailed log with dates and times. "Their persistence will work in our favor," he had said. "Every time they show up after we've told them not to approach, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order." On Friday morning, I was peacefully having breakfast when the doorbell rang. The camera showed a very well-dressed young woman with the folder in her hands and a professional smile. I didn't recognize her, but something about her posture told me this was not a social visit. "Good morning, Miss Renata Richter," she said when I opened the door. "I'm a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation, and we need to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. Max and Lena had escalated the situation. This wasn't just threats from private lawyers anymore. Now they had involved the government. "Can I see your identification?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Of course. She showed me an official ID that looked genuine. "I'm social worker Miss Schmidt. May I come in and talk with you?" I let her in, knowing that refusing would look worse for my case.
Miss Schmidt sat in my living room and pulled out a form from her folder. Mrs. Richter, we've received reports that you've shown significant changes in your financial behavior, that you've cut off communication with your family, and that you've shown signs of paranoia by installing unnecessary security systems. We were also told you've refused medical and legal help offered by your loved ones. Every word had been carefully chosen to make me sound like a mentally disturbed old woman. I recognized Lena's handiwork in the wording. She had always been skilled at manipulating words to get what she wanted. "Miss Schmidt," I said with all the dignity I could muster, "I'd like to call my attorney before answering any questions." "Ma'am, this isn't a legal interrogation. It's a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem to speak with me." The phrase, "if you have nothing to hide," made my blood boil. It was the same logic abusers used to justify their invasions. If you're innocent, you shouldn't complain about your privacy being violated. "Miss, I'm calling my lawyer. You can wait here or come back another day, but I will not answer any questions without legal representation present." I called Mr. Weber, and he arrived within 20 minutes. When he walked in and saw the social worker, his expression hardened. "Miss Schmidt," after checking her ID, "I hope you have a court order to be here, because my client is under my legal representation, and any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment." "Sir," Miss Schmidt replied with less confidence than before, "we have reports from concerned family members about the lady's well-being. It's our duty to investigate." "What family?" Mr. Weber asked sharply. "The same family that tried to get her to sign a power of attorney without representation? The same family that broke into her house without permission and went through her private documents? The same family that excluded her from important events while living off her money?" Mr. Weber pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. "Here I have complete documentation of my client's financial and emotional abuse. $33,400 withdrawn from her accounts over 3 years. Systematic social exclusion and emotional blackmail. If anyone needs to be investigated here, it's not my client." Miss Schmidt reviewed the documents with growing discomfort. It was obvious the information she'd been given didn't match the reality in front of her. "Mrs. Richter," she said finally, "can you explain why you so abruptly stopped financial support for your son?" "Because I finally discovered they were using me," I replied simply. "Because I realized to them I wasn't a mother, I was a bank account. Because I got tired of financing the lives of people who saw me as an obstacle." "But don't you feel it's your responsibility to help your family?" The question outraged me. "Miss Schmidt, my responsibility as a mother was to raise my son until he was 18, to educate him, to give him the tools to be an independent adult. My son is 35 years old, married, and perfectly capable of supporting himself. Financing his adult life isn't my responsibility. It's my choice, and I've chosen not to do it anymore." Mr. Weber interjected. "Ms. Schmidt, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old adult to be unable to pay his own rent without help from his 71-year-old mother?" Ms. Schmidt didn't answer right away. I could see her reevaluating the entire situation. "Mrs. Richter," she asked for a moment, "do you manage your own finances completely?" "I can show you my bank statements, my investments, my tax payments. Everything is current and in order." "Do you live independently?" "As you can see, I keep my house clean, I take care of myself physically, I drive my own car, I have healthy social relationships with my neighbors." "Do you take any medications?" "Just vitamins and occasionally aspirin. I don't have any medical conditions that require medication." Mr. Weber added, My client has just undergone extensive medical exams as part of our legal process. She's in perfect mental and physical condition. Ms. Schmidt closed her folder. Mrs. Richter, based on this conversation and the documentation I've reviewed, I see no indication that you're at risk or in need of intervention. I'll be closing this case. After she left, Mr. Weber and I sat in silence for a few minutes. Renata, he said finally, this is going to continue to escalate. Max and Lena are spending money they don't have, hiring professionals to try to have you declared incompetent. Does that mean they're desperate? It means exactly that. What else can they do? They can file a lawsuit for incompetence. It's expensive and hard to win, but if they find a sympathetic judge and a psychiatrist willing to testify in their favor, they could get a guardian assigned. The thought terrified me. They could take control of my money, my life, my freedom. They could try, Mr. Weber said, reading my face, but we have solid evidence that you're completely competent and that they're motivated by greed, not genuine concern. That afternoon, I called Diana to vent. Sister, she said after hearing my story, do you notice how far they're willing to go for money? They're risking family relationships, spending money on lawyers and investigators, destroying their own reputation, all to get access to your bank account again. Her words made me think. Max and Lena had completely revealed their true nature. There was no going back. There was no possibility of genuine reconciliation. To them, I had never been a mother or a respected mother-in-law. I had always just been money on legs. This revelation, though painful, was also liberating. I no longer had to wonder if I was making the right decision. I no longer had to feel guilty about protecting myself. They had proven themselves that my emotional and physical well-being was less important to them than my money. That evening, Eleanor came to visit with a surprise. She had invited her friends from the garden club to meet me. Renata, she introduced me. These are my friends, Cynthia, who you already know, from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We've all been through similar situations with abusive family members. We spent the evening sharing stories. Maria had to set boundaries with the brother who constantly asked for money. Carmen had cut off her relationship with the daughter who only visited when she needed money. Alfreda had to change her will after discovering her grandchildren considered her their retirement plan. What hurts me most, I confessed, isn't losing the money I gave them. It's realizing I never had the love I thought I had. Renata, Alfreda said with the wisdom of her 80 years, true love can't be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it never was real. Her words were balm for my wounded soul. She was right. I had been buying attention, not love. I had been financing an illusion. You know what I've discovered? I said to my new friends. Being alone, surrounded by people who don't love you, is worse than being alone by yourself. At least now when I'm alone, I'm in good company.
A month after the social worker's visit, I thought I had finally won the war. I had settled into a beautiful routine. I had breakfast calmly and read the newspaper. I tended to my garden, had lunch with Eleanor or one of my new friends. In the afternoons, I devoted myself to activities I had given up for years. I had started painting again, something I was passionate about before I became Max and Lena's personal financier. But on a Thursday morning, while I was painting flowers on my new easel, Mr. Weber came to my house with a grim expression that made my blood run cold. Renata, we need to talk. Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They're requesting to have a legal guardian assigned to you. The words fell on me like stones. I knew it was a possibility, but hearing it out loud made it terrifyingly real. Does that mean they can take control of my money? If a judge determines you're unable to manage your affairs, yes, He could place Max as your legal guardian, which would give him full control over your finances. I sat down heavily on my sofa, feeling the weight of the deepest betrayal I had experienced in my life. My own son was trying to legally declare me incompetent to steal my money. Mr. Weber, what evidence could they possibly have? You've seen yourself that I'm completely competent. They have statements from 3 witnesses who claim you've behaved erratically. They've also submitted unpaid doctor's bills you supposedly didn't pay, and medications you supposedly hoarded without taking them. But that's a lie. I don't have any outstanding doctor's bills or hoarded medications. I know, Renata, but they've fabricated convincing evidence. They also have a statement from Dr. Lehman claiming you refused to cooperate with a psychiatric evaluation, which they're interpreting as proof of mental decline. The manipulation was diabolical. They had turned my refusal to undergo an unnecessary exam into proof of mental illness. They had used my instinct to protect myself as evidence that I needed protection. Who are the 3 witnesses? Mr. Weber looked through his documents. Lena, of course, a neighbor named Mr. Davis, and someone claiming to be your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Mr. Davis was the neighbor across the street, an unpleasant man who had always had problems with me because my friends sometimes parked in front of his house. Mr. Green was indeed my pharmacist, but I didn't understand what he could have against me. I need to talk to Mr. Green, I told Mr. Weber. Something's not right. We went to the pharmacy together that afternoon. Mr. Green looked surprised and nervous when he saw me. Mrs. Richter, it's good to see you. How are you? Mr. Green, I was told you signed a statement saying I show erratic behavior with my medications. His face turned red as a tomato. Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago asking about your medications. She said she was worried because you were acting strangely. And what did you tell her? I explained that you only buy vitamins and occasional aspirin, that you don't have any regular medical prescriptions. But she insisted this was proof you weren't taking adequate care of your health. Mr. Weber interjected. Mr. Green, did you sign a document? She brought a paper that said I was confirming Mrs. Richter had irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for her health insurance or something. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. My own pharmacist had been tricked into signing something he didn't fully understand. Lena's manipulation knew no bounds. Mr. Green, I said, I need you to write a statement explaining exactly what happened and clarifying that I have no problems with medications. Of course, Mrs. Richter, I'm terribly sorry about this misunderstanding. After the pharmacy, we went to confront Mr. Davis. When we knocked on his door, he received us with obvious hostility. What do you want? Mr. Davis, Mr. Weber said, I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior. That's right. I did. That woman is crazy. She's been acting strange for weeks. Can you be more specific about the behaviors you observed? Installing cameras like she lives in a war zone, having strangers visiting all the time, yelling at her family in the street? I realized Mr. Davis had taken everything out of context. The cameras were for protection. The strangers were my new friends. The yelling was me defending my house from Max and Lena's invasions. Mr. Davis, do you know why I installed those cameras? No, and I don't care. To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law who broke into my house without permission and threatened me. That's what a crazy person would say, he replied cruelly. There was no reasoning with him. His statement was based on superficial observations maliciously interpreted. That evening, Mr. Weber and I planned our defense. Renata, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who is an expert in assessing mental capacity. She can officially confirm you're completely competent. The next day, I went to my appointment with Dr. Moore. She was a woman in her 50s with kind but sharp eyes. Mrs. Richter,
I'm going to ask you a series of questions and tests to assess your mental capacity. Take your time and answer honestly. For 2 hours, she asked questions about my memory, my reasoning ability, my financial understanding, my emotional health. She gave me cognitive tests and asked me to solve mathematical and logical problems. Mrs. Richter, your results are well above average for your age. You're not only mentally competent, but your cognitive function is excellent. Doctor, why do you think my family is doing this? Based on what you've told me and the documents I've reviewed, this appears to be a classic case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it's more common than people think. I left the appointment validated, but also sad. The professional confirmation of my mental health was a relief, but it also confirmed the lawsuit was real and necessary. The trial came 3 weeks later. I woke up early, put on my best black suit, and looked at myself in the mirror with the determination I had never felt before. Today wasn't just about judging my mental capacity. It was about my dignity as a person, my right to live free from abuse, my value beyond my bank account. We arrived at the courthouse at 9 in the morning. In the hallway, I saw Max in a new suit he probably bought for the occasion, and Lena dressed in black like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. The funeral of our family relationship. When our eyes met, Max looked away, but Lena held my gaze with a coldness that confirmed, for her, this was just a business transaction. The trial lasted all day. Their lawyer painted me as a confused old woman manipulated by strangers. Lena cried on the witness stand, claiming she just wanted to help me. Max testified about my supposed erratic behavior. But when Mr. Weber cross-examined them, the cracks showed. Lena couldn't name a single time she'd called me without asking for money. Max admitted he couldn't pay his own rent at 35 years old. Their whole case fell apart under scrutiny. Then it was our turn. Mr. Green testified about being tricked. Dr. Moore presented my excellent cognitive test results. Eleanor and my friends testified about my clarity and newfound strength. Finally, I testified. I told my whole story. The $33,000, the wedding humiliation, the manipulation, the threats. Mr. Weber asked me, "Why did you stop supporting your son financially?" Because I finally understood what I was getting from them wasn't love. It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome, but I, as a person, was not. When Judge Miller returned from deliberation, his words were clear. Mrs. Renata Richter is in full possession of her mental faculties. This lawsuit appears motivated by financial interest, not genuine concern. The request for guardianship is completely denied. I had won. Not just the lawsuit, but my freedom, my dignity, my right to live without abuse. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful apartment downtown. I donated half my money to organizations protecting elderly people from family abuse. With the other half, I began living the life I always wanted. I traveled, took art classes, joined volunteer groups. I never heard from Max and Lena again. I heard they had to move to a smaller apartment, and Lena got a job for the first time in years. Perhaps adversity would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and independence. My name is Renata. I'm 72 years old, and I finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself.